Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we find answers to the question, how can skilled immigrants succeed in Canada's IT industry? Thank you all for joining us. My name is Iona Santos Fresnoza, and I am a program coordinator here at the Immigrant Employment Council of British Columbia. I will be your moderator for this webinar, brought to you by the IECBC FAST program, which is funded by the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada with support from our industry partners at Traction on Demand and PQA Testing. Before I go to today's agenda, if you're having technical difficulties with accessing this webinar, please call GoToWebinar at 1-855-352-9003 and choose option 1 for webinar, followed by option 1 for troubleshooting. The number is also noted on the chat section of this webinar for your easy reference. We're very pleased to have a very good response for the session today, and we know that some folks who registered could not join us live because of the time difference. But to make this information as widely accessible as possible, this webinar will be recorded, and a link to this recording will be sent to everyone who signed up. This will also be shared with our partner service provider organizations. So in this webinar, our goals are to firstly provide you with an overview of the FAST program, which can help you build a successful IT career in Canada. Secondly, we want to provide you insights from our panel of IT professionals from Traction on Demand and PQA Testing on how you can prepare for a successful career transition before you land here. And we'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation. You can type them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them in today's session. And if there are any questions that we're not able to respond to, you can email us and we will answer them there. So we'll put our email address at the end of the session as well. And in total, we have around 45 minutes to an hour together. Joining me today are talent specialists from Traction on Demand, Jocelyn Mayer and Anthony Azar, and John Santamaria of PQA Testing. So foremost, we'd like all of our webinar participants to know who we are. The Immigrant Employment Council of British Columbia is a provincial not-for-profit organization that provides BC employers with the solutions, tools, and resources they need to attract, hire, and retain qualified immigrants like you, our FAST participants. We believe that the successful integration of skilled newcomers into the BC labor force is critical to both their success and our province's long-term economic performance. We work with employers, governments, and other partner stakeholders to ensure that BC employers can effectively integrate global talent. This webinar is made possible through funding from the Government of Canada. And about the FAST program. So it's an online career preparation program helping skilled immigrants like you get ready for the Canadian workplace before arriving in Canada. It is recognized that skilled immigrants play a significant role in filling the labor gap in Canada. In BC alone, the BC Tech Association recently reported a talent crisis, which is limiting its growth. Companies say a shortage of talent is making it difficult to fill key job openings, according to a statement from the association's BC Technology Report Card. And while immigrants play a vital role in coping with this labor demand, it's not easy finding a job. And there are barriers to employment, such as unfamiliarity with Canadian workplace expectations, the lack of cultural fit, which is a crucial factor in hiring decisions, and also the lack of local industry connections has a big impact. And seeing this need, the IECBC has developed the FAST program, which is designed to support skilled immigrants like you in preparing for a successful career in Canada. The benefits of completing the program are manifold. You'll acquire the soft skills that you need to integrate yourself into the Canadian workplace. You will learn about Canadian workplace communication styles, diversity in the workplace, and a variety of other relevant subjects to help you succeed in your new career in Canada. Upon graduation, you'll obtain a FAST certificate of completion, and you'll be matched with a Canadian professional in your field for e-mentoring sessions where you get to ask one-on-one questions about your industry and grow your professional network. And you will also get special access to BC Job Connect, an online tool which helps you showcase your talent to employers who are looking to hire. So you can create a profile and obtain the ICTC, or Information Communications Technology Council, ITP designation for free. And this is what I'm going to talk more about as well. So what is the ITP designation? It's the Information Technology Professional Certification, which aims to provide IT professionals immigrating to Canada with documentation to validate their non-Canadian or international work experience to employers. The goal of this program is to increase employability for immigrating IT professionals, and it's a $500 value free of cost for FAST participants. And how does the ITP designation work? So first, you have to sign up for FAST and complete the Prepare for Canada online modules. After you have successfully finished these, you can create a profile in ICTC's eTalent portal, and the link will be in the online learning module that you have. After that, ICTC will evaluate your international work experience against Canada's industry standards. And this is done through an assessment of transferable skills, work experience, and education. And once your application is received and reviewed, you'll receive an ITP certificate from ICTC, which you can then add to your resume or your CV when you are applying for jobs. Okay. So who are eligible to participate in the FAST program? You're eligible to register for this free government-funded program if you are not currently a resident or a citizen of Canada, if you were selected to become a permanent resident or have received an invitation letter, a visa pickup notification letter, or a visa, if you're a convention refugee or protected person who has been selected for resettlement in Canada by the IRCC, and if you are able to communicate effectively at a Canadian workplace skill level, which is intermediate to advanced English, you can participate for FAST. And also, if you have 2 or more years of experience in IT, biotech, or skilled trades, or a related occupation. So to date, we have more than 300 participants in the FAST program, and our graduates have this to say. The FAST program is very informative. I particularly enjoyed reading the article, Skills in the Digital Economy, Where Canada Stands in the Way Forward, and I'm sure many skilled immigrants are benefiting from the FAST initiative. The online modules were excellent. I really enjoyed studying the content. I now have a wider appreciation for the Canadian work environment and the skills required to be successful. This is from Uriv, an electrical and computer engineer from South Africa. He learned about the FAST program from the Canadian Immigrant Integration Program, or CIIP, and he's completed the FAST online modules within 2 weeks of receiving access, and he's immigrating to Canada next year. Here's another testimonial from a laboratory technologist named Gustavo from Brazil, who recently moved to Canada. He said, the learning modules were of extreme importance at this stage of preparation before my move to Canada. FAST provides excellent support for people like me who are full of concerns and uncertainties about our future. Congratulations on the amazing work FAST offers for free. So there are 17 in-demand occupations in the ITP sector in Canada. If you work in IT, but if your occupation is not on this list, you may still be eligible for FAST if you're in a related field or if you are eyeing an alternative career. So this is also available on our website. You can take a closer look later. And we know that there are loads of potential to start and grow a career in Canada's IT industry. And to share more insights and advice on how to have a successful career in this vibrant and growing industry, we're honored to have our guest speakers from two of the leading IT companies in Canada, Traction on Demand and PQA Testing. So let's start with the Traction on Demand team. Over to you, Jocelyn and Anthony.
Awesome. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for that overview, and hello to all the listeners on there. We're excited to have a chance to chat with you today and communicate some stuff that we hope will be informative for you in your move to Canada. Do you guys want to switch the slide, please? Just going to do some quick introductions to you of a vague idea of who we are, although we don't want to spend too much time on that because I think the content we have is more relevant. So this is where we work. So, Traction is a consulting company working with a variety of other companies to implement a cloud-based technology called Salesforce. If you haven't heard of Salesforce before, it is a massive online platform that started as a customer relationship management software system, but has turned into much more than that now. And I could spend an hour just telling you about Traction and Salesforce, but suffice to say, we're in a partnership with them, and we work with other companies to implement technology. If you want to learn more about Traction, feel free to check out our website. But yeah, we're definitely a high growth organization. I've been hiring a ton of people from different backgrounds, which is super important to us. And we also have a pretty well-defined organizational culture. We'll get into why that's important a little bit later on in the presentation. Next slide, please.
Hi, everybody. So I am Jocelyn. I have joined Traction in January of this year. I am actually originally from South Africa as well, so this presentation today is super important and very close to my heart. I've been in recruitment now for just over 2.5 years. And yeah, working alongside Anthony to find great people to bring into the Traction family.
Next slide, please. And I'm Anthony. So I've been at Traction for about 2.5 years now. Been in HR for over 5. And yeah, it's been super fun working here at Traction and very exciting. I started with the company, we're about 130 people, and now we're about 330. So pretty amazing growth. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. Awesome. So at a high level, this is the things that we're going to try and touch on quickly today to give you guys a better understanding of how the Canadian market might be a little bit different from where you're coming from. And so 6 different pieces, and Josh and I are going to switch on talking about all of them. There's lots we can say about each of these topics, but we're trying to distill it down to, I guess, the really important pieces for you to consider when coming to Canada. Of course, if there's anything you want more information about, there's a Q&A at the end, so get those questions down and we'll tackle them for you at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. The first one we're going to talk about is culture fit, and this one is not super easy to understand sometimes, but also something that I think is really relevant, both as people that are coming into the tech sector, because it tends to be a bigger topic of conversation here, but also something that just other employers are looking for. It's relevant in that when you think about a candidate, obviously there's skills that typically companies are looking for, but often the thing they're looking for as well as fit is fit. And it's fit with the organization and also fit with the people that the role would be moving into. So, often when I talk to international candidates, they say, "Oh, well, I'm open to any culture." And, I think that answer doesn't really resonate for a lot of employers. They're looking for connection to the company, and they're looking for your ability to really connect with those in the organization. And so, I encourage candidates to think about, what is the right organization for you? Because, if you think about different organizations, they're all wired a little bit differently. So, a large government organization, a little bit slow moving, things are pretty stable. There's lots of different levels. And so, career progression through levels in an organization with a lot of rules is your cup of tea, then, government might be the right place for you. A tech company like Traction, our culture is a lot more loose. We don't have a lot of rules and regulations. We're trying to create more of like a family feel here. There's lots of other things that are important to the people here, like getting to know each other and volunteering. but the downside of a culture like Traction is that maybe it requires a little bit more. And if you just want to show up and do your work and then head out and be home with your family and your friends, then this place might not be right, because I think the ask at Traction in a company and a culture like ours is to spend more time with the people here and to do other things with them. So, I don't think there's not one. Each culture has its own merits, I think is what I'm trying to say. So sometimes people tell me like, oh, well, I hear about a culture fit. How can I make myself into a culture fit? And I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is, define the organization that's going to be right for you, and then go after those organizations and be clear as to why you think they're a really great fit for you, based on some of the things beyond the kind of day-to-day work. Yeah, next slide, please.
Alrighty, so resumes and cover letters, super important pieces of paper and documents that you are sending out to probably hundreds of companies. It's the company's first glimpse basically into who you are. Generally, it's the first touch point that you get to introduce yourself and your background and all of the great skills that you are bringing to the table. I know we see a lot of international resumes, and the formatting is quite different. So my recommendation before I go into long spiel about what it looks like is have a look at examples of what resumes look like here in Canada. They're short lists of things. We prefer, at least we here at Traction, we prefer 2 pages, nothing more than that. You can condense it down. Don't try and jam too much information in there, because what it is it's giving a person and a recruiter or a hiring manager an insight into you, and then allowing an opening for a conversation into what more that will bring to the table, what more you're bringing to the table. So definitely pay attention to the formatting. Don't include your demographic information. It's not required here in Canada. The other important skills and the work history that you have, and even if it's not a lot, create substance there and create things that an employer would be interested in. The also other really important thing as well is that when you're applying for as many jobs as people generally are applying for, it's very easy to just serial apply. Like you see a position and there are wonderful websites where they can just, it's a quick apply and then they just blast off your information. But what often happens is that, the intention of, you standing out from the crowd is lost, because you are then, it's a generalized CV or a generalized resume and cover letter that is getting loaded into the pile with everybody else's, and it doesn't necessarily make you stand out. So, read through the job descriptions, go and find out about the companies, why it is that you're wanting to join them and what gets you excited about this position and about their company, and speak to that. A cover letter is not supposed to be a carbon copy of your resume just written out in words. A cover letter is supposed to give a little bit of insight into who you are as a person, and the things that you're bringing to the table that are not in your work experience and in the skills that you're bringing to the table. Make yourself stand out, be different, and tell them why it is that you're excited and why it is that you think that you're the right person for the role, and it will give a little bit better understanding for the company as well that you've put a little bit of time and effort into them, which is important, because it is a two-way relationship at the end of the day. You're there and giving of your time to the company, and the company is investing in you as well. So yeah, I think that definitely sort of sums up what I would say about resumes and cover letters. Don't just serially apply. It's not going to help you.
Next slide, please. So language is a big one for sure, and of course, we understand that a lot of you English is not your second language. I think that you're moving to Canada. There's a variety of roles out there, and I think within an organization there's a variety of different required language levels depending on the position that you're moving into. And I think trying to be aware of where your language level is at now, and what the required language level might be at for the position that you're applying for is very important. So, when I think about roles at Traction, I know that we have a little bit more flexibility on language level for some of our more technical roles, like development roles. Essentially, the more, for us being a consulting company, the more external the role is, the more client-facing it is, the less opportunity we have to bring on people who do not have an excellent English language level. And so I'd recommend having a think about that. If you're a developer, that's great. It doesn't mean that you should practice your English and make it better. But I think typically companies have a little bit more ability to bring on people with maybe not quite as good English language level. But ultimately, I think it is a barrier for a lot of candidates coming from other countries, because not only it sort of barriers you at the very first step, because maybe you've got a really great resume and you get invited for the interview, but you can't speak to your background well enough and your comprehension isn't well enough to do well in the interview, then it can definitely be a barrier for you. So we always recommend newcomers, keep practicing your English. Taking some courses is great, but to really get that mastery level, it requires you going out and find a conversation partner or do some volunteer work. There's some great organizations that are looking for technical talent to do some volunteer work. And one, it's a great thing to throw on your resume if you do some volunteer work when you get here, to show that you've not been idle, that you've been doing something, which is great. You also might build some additional skills by doing the volunteer work. And on top of that, hopefully there's a great opportunity for you to practice your English with other people and work with them to get feedback, so you can continue to grow that skill set, so that when the job comes up that you really want, you're feeling a lot more comfortable with your English and you've been practicing with some of the organizations. Next slide, please. There we go.
Networking. So, especially here in the west coast of Canada, super important event, I suppose you could call it, that happens. There are a lot of opportunities for you to be able to attend different networking events. They can be association specific, they can be skills specific, they can be location specific. And networking, it's unfortunately sometimes, who you know rather than, what you know. Because it's an opportunity for you to get in front of people that are already in the working world here in Canada and in Vancouver specifically. It's an opportunity to learn about, what makes them different, what makes them happy at work, what are the exciting things that they're involved with. And get you in front of them to be able to, that it's a face now. It's not just a resume or a cover letter that they're reading, but it's actually a person that they can speak to and interact with. Definitely lots of options available. I would highly recommend there's LinkedIn, there's Meetups, there's all sorts of avenues to be able to explore for that. And I think the other thing that we want to touch on here with networking is that it's not that, we want you to be a person. When you are attending these networking events, do a little bit of research. Generally, the events will always send out details on who is attending. So, the companies that you're interested in, even if it's just, the 5 minutes introduction on their website, just go and have a little bit of an idea about who they are, so you can have an intelligent conversation when you come up to us and, you're asking about, what we're doing and who we are. We want to, see you as a person. We want to get to know you and, understand, what's important to you. It's generally very fast. It's, 3 minutes of speed dating at the end of the day, but very, very important because there are so many that are happening. It really does allow you to start building those relationships and getting in front of the right people, so that, again, you're standing out from the crowd and getting yourself in front of the people that you want to be speaking to.
And just another point on networking, I think pretty much everybody hates it. And so, we definitely recognize that you're coming from another country and there's another barrier for you, which could be English, and of course maybe not knowing anybody, but you're not alone if you show up to these events and you feel a little bit lost, a little bit uncomfortable. That sentiment is the same for people that are from here or from other places. And so, accept that feeling. It may or may not go away, but, dive right in. And I promise all of the recruiters, we're very nice people, and we're there to chat with you. Next slide, please. We sort of touched on this a little bit when we were talking about networking, but there are lots of professional organizations in Canada, and this can be a little bit different depending on where you're coming from, but lots of these organizations, they preside over professional designations, whether it's engineering or environmental or biology, and some technical ones as well. So, I always encourage candidates to find out the professional organization that could be relevant for them and their discipline, and try to connect with these organizations. One, there might be some credentialing that you might need to do once you get here, and it's great that the program, the FAST program, is helping you with international accreditation of your education. But sometimes there is a professional designation that would also be useful in the field. And so these organizations are often the ones who are granting the designation, and occasionally there's other proof you need to do or courses you might need to take through them, but it's worth your time to investigate which professional organization might be relevant for you. The other things that they provide beyond that are often there's job boards associated with professional organizations, and so there could be some leads there for roles you might want to apply for. Educational opportunities, and they also run their own networking events as well most often, so another avenue for you to check out some events where you might meet like-minded individuals or people from the same background, which can be helpful in your job search.
So be intentional. I think it's sort of on each of the different points that we've been chatting about today. It's very much about know what you want and go after it. We understand that it can be really difficult finding a job and finding your first sort of foothold here in a new country, and it definitely can be very frustrating. Looking for a job eventually it turns into a full-time job. But we definitely find that people who know what is important to them, know what they are bringing to the table, and know what they want out of a role and out of a company and a community that they're joining, it definitely makes a difference. Don't tell us that you'll take any job. Don't tell us that any company is the right company for you, because it's not true. And we want to get an insight into that because it's important for us. That we're going to be spending time and with the training that we're looking to provide to you and everything like that, that we're providing that's what aligns for you. And so you are allowed to be clear on what it is that is important to you and what you don't want. More than anything else, if you don't know what you do want, at least know what you don't want, because that will at least be able to give you a little bit better alignment in terms of where you're wanting to go and how you're going to get there.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Jocelyn and Anthony. I can really feel the passion that you have for your work, and thank you for sharing those practical advice. And we're also pleased to have this morning John Santamaria from PQA Testing. Take it away, John.
Thanks, Iona. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks very much, Jocelyn and Anthony. That was an excellent presentation. Lots of great information, and I'll try not to repeat too much of it myself. But I'll introduce myself, John Santamaria. I am an immigrant myself, and I work very closely with Indigenous people in Canada, and they'll tell us that we're all immigrants here. And so I think it's good to know that you're in good hands. Canada's an amazing country. And we work very hard as a country to create opportunities for everyone and create a welcoming environment for our immigrants. And it's been very welcoming for me. My family came in 1969, and our family's had a lot of success here. So just a word of encouragement that everyone can have a lot of success here. PQA Testing, the company I work for, we're a very specific company geared towards quality assurance and testing all across Canada. And there's a little bit of information there for you. On the Plato side of things, Plato is I should say PQA Testing is a 20-year-old company in Canada, but just about 2 years ago we started an organization called Plato, which we set up to create employment opportunities for Indigenous people in Canada. That's something that we've struggled with as a country, and so with our recent Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it's something that as an organization we want to do, we want to fulfill, and so our organization is very geared towards creating those kind of opportunities, both for Indigenous people and on the PQA side. I would say the bulk of our staff here are immigrants like myself, and so it's a very welcoming environment there. As far as advice, again, great advice in that traction presentation. I would say that you probably followed already by being here the first piece of advice that I have, which is to leverage the various services that are available to you. There are many services in Canada. We work very hard. Organizations like IEC work very hard to reach out and create those opportunities. So by all means, do leverage them. And then my next piece of advice would be to just get out there. Get out there, meet people. As Jocelyn and Anthony said, networking is very important. Don't look at it as a job. Look at it as a way to make connections with other people. It can be difficult, and sometimes there are language barriers. But if there's one thing I've learned about Canadians is that as a group, we all want to help. And there's nothing that makes people feel better than being asked for a little bit of help. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, but do reach out, get out there, and tell your story. Make a connection with people. Tell them how you arrived, what caused you to come to Canada. Well, how did you make that choice, and what are you looking for? I think it was Jocelyn that talked about intention. What is your story? Why are you here? What do you want to accomplish? Speaking for myself and my family, we wanted a better life, and we've had an amazing life in this country. While you're telling your story, I guess one thing to remember as someone who interviews hundreds of people is a very important piece is the 2-minute rule. I call the 2-minute rule. And when you're talking to people, I think it's really good to keep your conversations at when it's your turn to talk, I would say, keep it under 2 minutes. And make sure that you're allowing the other person that you're communicating with to engage. So, as you're thinking about what is the story you want to tell about yourself, think about how can you condense that down to 2 minutes and allow that person to reach out and ask for more and learn more about you, but to have, just have that back and forth.
Thank you so much, John.
You're very welcome.
All right, it's really wonderful hearing your story and great practical advice. I love what you said about giving the other person space as well to engage and interact. And yeah, it's just amazing to hear from you, from Jocelyn and Anthony this morning. And let me summarize this session actually before we go into a Q&A and discussion. So, building a successful career in Canada, I feel like these are 3 main things that we can look at. Firstly, is preparation. We've said it's important to research, plan, and prioritize your steps as skilled immigrants, and preparation is key to successful integration. And becoming an incoming immigrant presents a lot of exciting opportunities, but can also cause a lot of stress because of the uncertainties. But awareness and information can help you better become prepared for what is to come. And this is where the FAST program can help. You can transition smoothly to a Canadian workforce by starting your career preparation early on before you even land in Canada. And if you have already signed up for FAST, completing the online training and getting your ITP certification from ICTC is a good start. Next one I want to point out is continuous learning. Learning and adapting will always be integral to growth and success. And as Anthony has mentioned earlier, culture fit is important to companies. So find where you fit in terms of values and professional goals. And with your resume and cover letter, Jocelyn spoke to this, it's important that you revise and adapt them to fit Canadian standards. And there are resources online that can help you do this. You can actually seek your career counselor's advice. If you're working with CIIP, there are available resources for you to help you revise your resume and get feedback on them before you submit them for applications or to a job posting. And last but not least, building connections is a significant factor in setting you up for success. it's not just about getting help, but also giving back. So it's important to reach out, see where you can contribute in your professional community, and to network. Being a newcomer presents that opportunity to meet new people, meet new friends in your field. So get out there and learn about what your industry peers are up to and how you can get involved. And thirdly, joining professional organizations is a must, or is a plus. In any industry, it's important to stay current, and more so in the tech world where everything kind of changes every day. And it's worthwhile to get connected with professional organizations. Like for BC, I know there's the BC Tech Association and the Information Technology Association of Canada, national organization for IT folks. And so these three are some of the foundational steps that can really help you in building a successful career in Canada. So at this point, we'd like to take questions from the group. Please use the chat box and we'll do our best to answer your questions. And if you have specific questions addressed to our panelists, please let us know in the chat box as well. So, okay, we have one question from Anthony. I have a question for Anthony, same name. How do you think we can tell or find out the type of culture an organization practices? What suggestions do you have?
Good question for sure. Yeah, I think the first step would be for sure to, and some companies are really clear about describing what their culture is, and some are not. But I think the first step for sure would be to go online to their website and try to dig into the About Us section or any of the background information. That might help you understand the culture. Sometimes the information is also on more of the career section of the website where they're diving in because they want you to get to know the company, and so the culture information could be in either of those sections on the website. So that's worth a read, and I would recommend that if you're interested in applying for a company, that a good best practice is to always read the website to understand the business, to understand all the information that they're putting out there publicly. So I think that would be the first step. I think the next one I would recommend would be there's a website in North America, I don't know how active it is internationally, called Glassdoor, and there's more information there. Typically, what's on Glassdoor is reviews from either people who have been in the interview process with a company before, or who have been an employee with the company, and so that's more information. I would say that reviews on Glassdoor are to be taken with a grain of salt. Sometimes people use them as a venting mechanism for when employment or interview didn't go well for them and they were hoping otherwise. But I think it still can be a good conduit of information. And then the next piece, which is probably the best one, is if you're going to a networking event and you can meet a representative from the company, asking them is probably the best way to get that kind of information, because then you can actually hear from somebody in the organization, and so that would be helpful as well. If you get the opportunity to get into the office for an interview, you can also have a look around the office and see what you can see there, which could help you understand the culture. So, how organized is the office? Does everybody sit in cubicles, or is it more of a open concept? Are people allowed to, decorate their desks, or is it a quite regimented environment where everyone's desks look the same? What kind of energy are you feeling when you walk in the door? Is it very quiet? Is it very loud? What sort of other things might you see in that environment that helps you to understand, what might be the prevailing feeling there? And so I think, seeing an office can tell you a lot about what's important to that particular company. So those are the ones that are coming up for me.
Great. Thanks so much, Anthony. We have another question, and this is specific to the FAST program, from Deepak Sethi. I landed in 2015 as PR and went back after a week's time. Now I am planning to move to Canada in summer 2018. Can I get enrolled in the FAST program? Deepak, absolutely. We have posted the sign-up link on the chat box, so please go to that and fill up the form, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours with your welcome letter with your login details to access the FAST program. So to also reiterate, the FAST program is for skilled immigrants who are preparing to transition to Canada. This is available for 3 main streams: IT, biotech, and skill trades. And if you have friends or you know anyone who is also preparing for their immigration to Canada and have already been approved, this program is for them. So please feel free to share the information. Right. I'd like to pose a question for all of our panelists. We always get this question, are you hiring, and which positions are available in your company? And as skilled immigrants, are they able to apply even if they're still overseas? And what kind of process does that entail? Like, yeah.
Sure. We definitely have tons of roles available right now. They're all online on our website. They're typically all from a technical background. We're hiring for our office here in Burnaby, which is just adjacent to Vancouver, but also Toronto and Montreal. Yeah, I don't want to start listing them because I think we have over 30 jobs up there. So there's a fair bit. They're all technical background. You know, to my point earlier in the slide, often, you know, your English level would dictate a lot as to whether or not you would qualify for the role. And with the kind of more developer type roles, typically there's a little bit more flexibility on English language, but high comprehension would still need to be there for sure. I typically don't tell candidates to apply until they are actually here in Canada, just because we prefer to have them and prefer to have you in the office, because, you know, it's part of it helps you to get to know us a little bit better because you can actually sit down with us and get to know us. We also tend to move pretty quickly in our recruitment process, and so if we meet you and we like you, we're going to want you to be starting within a couple of weeks. And I don't know, when people are not in the country, it gives us pause a little bit because, you know, we're worried about when they'll be able to start with us. So, you know, if you know that for sure you'll be there within the next few weeks, then I'd say, you know, you can potentially start the process for sure. Yeah, if you know that you're not moving for another 3 months, then for me that would be like that would be a non-starter, because I have needs that I would be trying to fill immediately.
Okay, thanks so much, Anthony. John, did you have anything to add?
Sure. Yeah. Here at PQA Testing, we're always hiring. We've always got clients that need this particular skill set. I think our focus is mostly on senior testers, on team leads, and on quality consultants. That's where our focus is. On the entry-level side of things, we're focusing more on the Indigenous community now and creating those opportunities. But certainly at the more senior levels, I think the real niche that we need right now is we need what are called SDETs, software development engineers in test. And so those are either testers with a development background or developers, programmers who are interested in doing more testing. And that's a really niche role that is very, very difficult to fill in Canada.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, John. We have another question from Shobha. Does the FAST program need to be completed before coming to Canada, or can it be done post-landing too? We recommend that you complete it before you land in Canada, but it happens that you sign up for the program like 2 weeks before leaving your country. So you can continue completing the online learning even if you're here. And another question from Anthony, is the FAST program eligible to people who do not have a degree, or just secondary education, for example, but with skilled work experience in the software industry? Absolutely, you're eligible still, as long as you are approved to move to Canada. We don't really check your education requirements. However, with the ITP certification, that's where they may need to get your diploma. So, but I encourage you to still sign up for FAST, because I feel like you would benefit from the online training that is offered there. We have, I think, last question that we can for this session is from Tariko. He asks, what is the language requirement for an analyst-related job? So Anthony or Jocelyn or John, if you can speak to this, please.
Yeah, it's a very general question. I think it's difficult to answer. You know, from my experience, analysts, there's all sorts of different kinds, whether it's a business analyst or a quality assurance analyst. there's a ton of different roles, and so I think it's difficult to put it into one requirement for each company, because each company will be quite different. So I think when you're reading jobs, trying to understand how client-facing the role would be, I think will likely drive up the necessity for the role to be very fluent in English. But if it looks like the role is a lot of development-related activities or analysis-related activities that is not client-facing, then my sense would be that the requirement would be lower. But it's a general statement. I think it would depend on company to company, and it might not be that easy to know beyond kind of like those things that you might see. Again, might be worth reaching out to a recruiter. We're all on LinkedIn, so if you're not on LinkedIn yet, I don't know if we talked about that, but it is a really good tool for sending messages to people at organizations, especially recruiters, to get more information about requirements on jobs.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. And one last question from Amar. I've worked in the U.S., in a U.S.-based company in the past, out of their office in the U.S. and back in my home country. Does that give any boost to my being candidate during interviews?
This is Anthony. I'd say so for sure. I think if you've worked in an English language speaking country, then I'm sure your language level will be better for it because you've spent several years there. I think Canadian companies are always, I don't understand this mentality entirely. Like, a lot of Canadian companies are looking for Canadian experience, and I don't know if U.S. experience would align for them. For us, that's less important. I think experience is relevant from each country, but I know lots of organizations don't feel like that. So I think, again, it might depend on what role you're applying for. I know in my previous company, civil engineering, because civil engineering is quite different from country to country, there wasn't that much of a crossover, but I think in tech, I think things are a lot closer. And so I'd say that I think all experience is good experience in my opinion, and I'm sure that will help you. But I don't think it's something that you should focus on. Like, you've got great experience, make sure it's written out there, and of course you're qualified for lots of roles, and so don't focus on how you're better than the competition. Focus on why you're great for a particular role.
And if I could just add to what Anthony said there, I agree with everything he said. The piece I'd add is that just be open to the fact that Canadian culture can be very different than American culture, and just be open to that, and look for opportunities to create that distinction. That's it.
Right. Thanks so much for sharing, Anthony and John. And we have a comment here from Kaushik. He is expressing that when he moves to Canada, even though he has about 5 years of experience in his role, he has to start in a much lower role. So what advice would you give to incoming immigrants actually who have kind of established themselves internationally at a more senior level, but also have to start somewhere different or somewhere lower?
Yeah, I think it's the reality of what happens when you move to different countries, and while you may see a little bit of a step back, we often take steps back in life to take bigger steps forward. And so I think bear that in mind, but also try to understand the other things that maybe you will need to learn in more of a single contributor role, because often those coming from other countries who have been into leadership roles, leadership can be different from country to country. And so I think understanding leadership styles and how leadership and management might be different in Canada can be a great point for you to learn and grow into as you get into the organization. As well, we've talked about language a lot, and understanding language and custom and culture of Canadian companies is also a thing that you're going to be learning. And so while maybe the work you feel might be a little less interesting for you, focus on picking up the other parts of working in Canada so that you can feel comfortable, so that what are management styles like here? What is the company culture all about, and how can I add to that? So that you can really show that you've adapted well to Canadian culture, so that when jobs come up for you to take that step forward again, you look like the best candidate.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anthony. You make an excellent point, and yeah, I can actually relate to what Kaushik and most immigrants are facing or experiencing. Like even though you feel like you have a lot of experience internationally, it's very different when you move to another country, and it's great to take it as a learning experience, and everything is a learning step to grow. So I think that's all the time that we have for this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. And if you have any additional questions or require any additional information from this session, please feel free to leave us an email at askbc@iecbc.org.ca, at iecbc.ca. And if you have questions for our guest speakers this morning, we'll be able to direct it to them as well and connect it to them. So if you haven't yet, if there are participants here in our webinar who haven't signed up for FAST, please don't forget to go to our website, fastbc.org, and there is a sign-up link there. And the short link is also posted in the chat box. And you can join our WhatsApp group for weekly updates and useful tips in preparing for your IT career in Canada. And thank you so much again, Anthony, Jocelyn, and John, for your time this morning. You've been very wonderful speakers, lots of great insights and great advice from you. And we want to have you again in the next sessions, hopefully. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.